Hey everyone, I'm back again. So I've just spent an hour editing the video on SEN notional budgets and then realised I hadn't actually explained where the rest of the school funding actually comes from, and probably like me, not everybody's a geek and they want to know that kind of thing, but sometimes it's useful to know where it does come from. So I want to jump into it. I did start recording this a few minutes ago and then my 2-year-old decided to come in the room and join in with the conversation, which was entertaining. So first of all, we have what's called Element 1 funding. That's your bum on seat money. And if you've watched that other video, it's that first column in that formula funding table that tells you how much money you're getting for each child, for each factor that is driven by that child, and it's the big numbers that we're talking about. So Northampton Academy is getting £5 million for the children that it's got actually bums on seats. It's getting, I can't remember what the figures were, but £117,000 or something for all of their pupils to do with their pupil premium status or their free school meal status. Is that kind of money. We then have what we call Element 2 funding, and that is actually the official name for the SEN notional budget. So it comes up with a whole variety of names over time, but Element 2 funding is your SEN or your notional budget. And again, if you've seen that other video, you'll know that that's to do with the percentage of certain factors, none of which have anything to do with SEN. SEN doesn't factor anywhere into anything apart from the fact it's this notional budget. Then you have something called Element 3 funding. And Element 3 funding does have another name that most of us know about it by, and it's called top-up funding. So when we all fill census in October and we're asked how much top-up funding do you receive, we kind of have to sit and do that calculation. Well, top-up funding is the money that we apply for against certain students, so named students. Now, in many local authorities, that now is ring-fenced only to students within the HCP. It was never meant to be, but that generally is where it ends up going. So Element 3 funding is money that you very definitely know you are getting. You're not likely to have just been given it on a plate. You've usually had to fill in some paperwork for it and show some evidence for it. I should remind you that your Element 1 funding is, of course, for everybody in the school. Element 2 funding, your notional SEN budget, is not ring-fenced. You can use it against whoever you need to use it against. And your Element 3 funding, strictly speaking, is ring-fenced because you're applying in the student's name for that piece of funding. Okay, you also have other bits of money that come into schools. So it's a little bit confusion because in the formula funding tables it talks about free school meals and pupil premium, and it's an allocation of money against that, but it isn't the pupil premium money that we talk about regularly. So pupil premium funding comes in separately. It comes usually in 3 blocks throughout the year, and of course there's different parts to that. So we have the deprivation funding, we have the looked after funding, and in some local authorities that doesn't ever come across the school, and we also have the service funding, so for children of our servicemen and women. Now, the looked after funding element of that, or Pupil Premium Plus, is the odd one because in some local authorities it's delegated straight to the school or the academy. In other local authorities it goes to the virtual head, and in some local authorities it's split between the two of them. It's whatever works in your local authority, and I don't think you get to have much of a say in it, to be fair. Okay, we also have in primary schools sports premium, which comes in, and in secondary schools we get the catch-up premium in year 7, which of course the formula for that actually changed in 2016, and I don't think anybody's managed to get their heads around it yet because it was rather a strange change. Previously we used to get that funding based on children who had not achieved a level 4 in their SATs, and of course in 2016 we got rid of level 4 and they couldn't base it on that anymore, so instead they based it on a percentage of students that had received it the year before, and against your new cohort that came into school and that percentage, and the same number kind of got it. Bit complicated, but it seemed to work if your primary schools kind of stayed the same and your local area hasn't changed massively in terms of ability of students coming through to you. Again, catch-up funding you can find on the DFE website. If you dive into it, the spreadsheets are there, and it doesn't just tell you, yeah, you get it or you don't get it. It actually tells you exactly how much funding your school is getting for that, and that's a public database. I don't have to be a part of a particular school to be able to access that information. If you are a primary school, you might have early years funding coming in, and that's funded slightly separately. And I call it the free school meals refund because that's the easiest way of explaining it. And you also have your universal free school meals as well. But any children who claim free school meals, of course, the school doesn't get funded in advance, like most things. They pay for it, and then they get the money back against that as well. So why am I saying this? Well, as SENCOs, we kind of need to know where our money's coming from. One of the things that really bugs me sometimes is when I look at people's provision maps and they have on there that they're going to pay for the SENCO from their SEN delegated budget. You can't. As a SENCO, you are a teacher in the school, and teachers' salaries must come from Element 1 funding. They have to be funded from the main budget, not from any catch-up funding, Pupil Premium funding, or any notional budget that's coming into your school. TAs, on the other hand, that's fine. They can be funded via that if that is an appropriate use of your resources. Everything is formula driven. Is that the fairest way? Generally speaking, yes. I can remember years ago that putting students onto your SEN register would mean you got a little bit more money, but it meant playing a game, and that wasn't the right thing for those students or for those schools or for anybody else that was involved, and that's why we've ended up going down a formula-driven route. And yes, I just think it's an important thing that SENCOs do know where your money is coming from. I was in a school recently where they've had to spend a lot of money on a critical incident that's happened in the school. Nothing safeguarding-ish, I would hasten to add, it's nothing to do with safeguarding, but they have had a critical incident in the school, and they're having to spend a lot of their Element 1 money against that critical incident to try and fix it and put things in place. Well, of course, that's going to have an impact further down the line because Element 1 money was there to pay for their teachers and their cleaners and their classrooms and all the rest of it. So they're going to end up dragging the money from elsewhere. And unless their SENCO's got a really tight hold of, well, actually, that money was coming in against this and I was using it for X, Y, Z, they're going to find it quite a hard battle to say, no, I'm not losing a TA at the end of the year, go find somebody else to lose. They've really got to fight that. And if you don't know your numbers, you can't do it. Did I always know the numbers for my schools? No, certainly not. Many years ago, it was before the times of Google and the internet, I certainly didn't know them. I think I just assumed money came into schools, end of. And I was given a budget to play with. But certainly over the last 10, 12 years or so, I've definitely been on top of what I have got coming in, or what I should have coming in, and what I am theoretically in control of. Do I think that every SENCO sees that money? Absolutely not. No chance. If my school's given that £500,000 allocation, which is what Northampton Academy gets, for their delegated budget, do I think their SENCO sees £500,000 of it? No way. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't have some idea of what that money is being spent on. And it might be being spent on mentors, TAs, it might be being spent on their resource centre. I don't know Northampton Academy, I just happen to find all their data online. But it could be being spent in genuinely the right places. But unless you know how much it is, how can you actually challenge it? So I hope that explains the other parts of funding as opposed to just throwing you all into the SEN notional budget in a very long video, detailed video, but very long, that probably didn't make much sense without the other bits that go with it. As always, any questions, drop me an email on abigail@sendcosolutions.co.uk. Always happy to talk to you, and I am amazed I've just managed to get through 10 minutes of video without being interrupted by either the dog's toenails or one of the 4 children barging into the room. Bye, guys.